The rain was relentless that night, a gray curtain of water hammering the city streets, turning them into rivers of regret. I stood under the awning of a dimly lit cafe, my cigarette glowing like a tiny rebellion against the storm. Across the street in that brownstone with the ivy strangling its bricks, something was unfolding, something I couldn't tear my eyes from even if I wanted to. My name's Clara, a nobody with a knack for noticing what others miss. I'm not proud of it, but I see things people hide in the dark corners of their hearts. It started innocently enough. I was just a neighbor, a shadow passing by their perfect lives. He was Mark, mid-40s, with a jawline that could cut glass and eyes that lingered too long. His wife, Ellen, was the kind of woman who wore her grace like armor, blonde, poised, always in control. They lived upstairs, second floor, where the curtains were never quite closed. I'd seen them laugh, fight, and make up through those slivers of light. But tonight, something was different. The air felt thick, electric, like the storm was daring them to break. I'd been watching for weeks, not because I meant to, but because their lives spilled out like a play I couldn't stop watching. Mark's hands on Ellen's waist in the kitchen, her laughter sharp and fleeting. But then there was her Lila, the renter in the basement apartment. Young, maybe 25, with curves that seemed to mock the rain itself, her dark hair clinging to her shoulders like a secret. I'd seen her glance at Mark, her eyes heavy with something unspoken. And tonight, under the rain's relentless drum, I saw it happen. The street was empty save for the occasional car slicing through the wet. I was about to head inside when I caught Mark standing in the alley beside the brownstone, his coat soaked through. Lila was there too, her dress plastered to her skin, the fabric doing little to hide the way her body moved. He hugged her waist, his hands pressing into her like he was claiming something he'd no right to. Ellen was upstairs, probably sipping wine, oblivious. The rain drowned out their words, but I didn't need to hear them. Their bodies spoke louder, his fingers digging into her hips, her head tilting back. Lips parted like she was drinking the storm itself. I should have looked away. I should have gone inside, lit another cigarette, and let the rain wash it all clean. But my feet stayed rooted, my breath fogging the air as I watched them. His hands slid lower, pulling her closer, and she didn't resist. Her fingers curled into his shirt, tugging him into the shadows of the alley. The rain was their curtain, their excuse, but it couldn't hide the heat between them. My heart pounded, not from shock, but from something darker, a twisted envy, a hunger to know what it felt like to burn like that. They moved like they'd done this before, like the storm was just another night for them. His lips grazed her neck and she arched into him, her breath visible in the cold air. I could almost feel it, the heat of his mouth, the shiver of her skin. It was wrong, all of it, but it was alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. My own life was a string of gray days, but theirs was a fire reckless and consuming. I wanted to scream, to run upstairs and tell Ellen, but I didn't. I stood there complicit, my cigarette burning down to ash. The alley's shadows swallowed them, but not before I saw her hand slide down his chest, her fingers teasing the edge of his belt. My throat tightened. This wasn't love, it was hunger, raw and unapologetic. The kind that makes you forget who you are, who you're supposed to be. I knew that feeling, or at least I remembered it faint as a ghost. Watching them, I felt it stir again, a dangerous pull in my chest. The rain kept falling and I kept watching, knowing I was part of their sin just by standing there. The storm didn't let up, and neither did they. The alley was a black void now, but I could still make out their shapes pressed against the brick wall like they were trying to carve themselves into it. Mark's hands were everywhere, her waist, her thighs, her face, like he was mapping her out, memorizing every curve before the rain washed her away. Lila's head was thrown back, her lips parted, and I swear I could hear her sigh over the roar of the storm. It was reckless, stupid, even with Ellen just a flight of stairs away, but that's what made it so alive. I shifted under the awning, my shoes squeaking on the wet pavement. My cigarette was gone, but I lit another, the flame trembling in my hands. I wasn't supposed to care this much. I was just Clara, the neighbor who kept to herself, who nodded politely when Ellen offered me her homemade scones. But now, I was something else, a witness, a voyeur caught in the pull of their forbidden dance. I hated them for it, and I hated myself more for wanting to see it through. Mark whispered something, his lips brushing Lila's ear. She laughed low and throaty, the sound cutting through the rain like a blade. My skin prickled. I imagined her voice soft but dangerous, promising things Ellen could never offer. He pulled her closer, his hands sliding under her dress, and I felt my own breath catch. The way they moved wasn't just desire, it was desperation, like they knew this moment would cost them everything but couldn't stop. I wanted to look away, but my eyes were traitors, locked on the way her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him into her. The brownstone's windows glowed above, and I pictured Ellen up there, maybe reading, maybe waiting for Mark to come back from whatever lie he'd told her. Did she know? Did she sense the way her world was cracking under her feet? I'd seen her smile falter sometimes, her eyes searching his when she thought no one was watching. She wasn't stupid. But love makes you blind, and Mark was the kind of man who could make you believe anything. I wondered if Lila knew that, or if she was too far gone to care. Their bodies pressed tighter, the rain no longer a barrier but a conspirator. His hands cupped her face, and for a moment they just stared at each other, their breaths mingling in the cold air. It was intimate, too intimate, like I was intruding on a secret meant only for them. But I couldn't stop. The way Lila's eyes held his, defiant and needy, made my chest ache. She wanted him, not just his body, but the danger of him, the thrill of stealing what wasn't hers. And he was lost in her, his hands trembling as they traced her jaw, her throat, her collarbone. I flicked my cigarette into the gutter, the ember hissing as it died. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from the weight of what I was seeing. This wasn't just an affair. It was a collision, two people hurtling toward ruin and dragging me with them. I should have walked away, should have gone home and pretended I'd seen nothing. But the truth was, I was hooked. Their desire was a drug, and I was breathing it in secondhand, but just as potent. The rain kept falling, and I stayed, my eyes burning with the need to see what came next. The alley seemed to shrink around them, the world reduced to their bodies and the rain. Mark's hands were bolder now, slipping under Lila's dress, his fingers tracing paths I could only imagine. Her head tilted back against the brick, her lips parted in a silent gasp, and I felt my own pulse quicken. The storm was their accomplice, drowning out any sound that might have given them away. But I saw it all the way. Her hands gripped his shoulders, the way his mouth found her throat, leaving marks she'd have to hide come morning. I leaned against the cafe's wall, my breath shallow, my mind a tangle of guilt and fascination. I wasn't supposed to feel this way, wasn't supposed to let their sins seep into me. But it did. The way Lila's fingers dug into Mark's back, the way his body pressed against hers, it was like watching a fire you knew would burn the house down but couldn't stop staring at. They were reckless, but they were alive, and I was just a ghost on the sidelines, hungry for a taste of their heat. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and for a moment they paused, their foreheads touching, their breaths heavy. It was almost tender, but there was nothing soft about it. It was the calm before the storm broke again, and I knew it wouldn't last. Lila's hand slid down his chest, her fingers teasing the buttons of his shirt, and I could see the hunger in her eyes, the kind that doesn't care about consequences. Mark's hands were on her hips again, pulling her so close there was no space left between them. They were drowning in each other, and I was drowning with them. I thought about Ellen again upstairs, probably folding laundry or checking her phone, waiting for a man who was giving himself to someone else. Did she feel the shift in the air, the way the world tilted when trust started to crack? I wanted to hate Mark, to hate Lila, but I couldn't. They were too human, too flawed, their desire too raw to judge. I was no better standing here feeding off their betrayal like it was my own. My cigarette pack was empty now, and I cursed under my breath, my hands itching for something to hold on to. They moved again, slower this time, but no less intense. His lips were on hers, a kiss that wasn't gentle but demanding, like he was trying to claim her soul. She melted into him, her body yielding in a way that made my stomach twist. The drizzle caught the streetlight, casting their shadows in sharp relief, and I saw every detail, the curve of her spine, the tension in his arms, the way her dress clung to her thighs. It was beautiful and terrible, a moment that would haunt them both, when the rain stopped and reality came crashing in. I wanted to scream to break the spell, but my voice was gone. All I had was the weight of their secret pressing down on me like the rain itself. They were lost in each other, but I was the one who'd carry this moment, the one who'd see it every time I passed their brownstone. The storm was easing, but the damage was done. They'd crossed a line, and I'd watched them do it, my heart racing with a mix of shame and longing. I was part of their story now, whether I wanted to be or not. The rain was barely a whisper now, but the air was still heavy, charged with the weight of what I'd seen. Mark and Lila pulled apart, their breaths ragged, their eyes locked like they were afraid to let go. Her dress was a ruin, clinging to her like a second skin, and his shirt was half open, exposing the taut lines of his chest. They didn't speak, but their silence was louder than words. It was the silence of two people who knew they'd gone too far, but weren't ready to turn back. I stepped back into the shadows of the awning, my heart pounding like I was the one caught. They hadn't seen me, hadn't even glanced my way, but I felt exposed, like the storm had stripped me bare. Lila smoothed her dress, her hands trembling, and Mark ran a hand through his wet hair, his eyes darting toward the brownstone. Ellen was still up there, oblivious, her world intact for now. But I knew it wouldn't last. Secrets like this don't stay buried. They fester, they spread, they destroy. They whispered something too low for me to hear, but I saw the way Lila's lips curved, a smile that was half triumph, half guilt. She touched his face, her fingers lingering on his jaw, and he leaned into her touch like a man starved. It was intimate, too intimate, and I felt like an intruder again, but I couldn't leave. Not yet. I needed to see how it ended, needed to know if they'd walk away or dive deeper into the abyss. Mark pulled her close one last time, his hands framing her face, and they kissed again, slower, like they were savoring the taste of their sin. The drizzle caught the light, turning them into a painting, beautiful, doomed, untouchable. Then they broke apart, and Lila slipped back into the basement apartment, her door clicking shut like a verdict. Mark stood there alone in the alley, the rain washing over him like it could cleanse what he'd done. But it couldn't. I knew that, and so did he. He glanced up at the brownstone, his face a mask of guilt and want, and then he was gone, disappearing into the stairwell. I waited, my breath held, expecting something, Ellen's voice, a light going out, anything. But there was nothing, just the quiet drip of the rain and the ache in my chest. I'd seen too much, felt too much, and now I was stuck with it, a witness to their crime and my own silent complicity. I turned away, my shoes splashing in the puddles as I headed home, but their story clung to me, heavy as the rain-soaked air. I'd seen the way desire can burn through everything, promises, trust, love, and I'd felt it too, that dangerous pull, that need to taste the forbidden. I didn't know if I'd ever tell Ellen, or if I'd just carry this secret until it broke me. But one thing was sure, this wasn't the end. Not for them and not for me. So what do you think? Did this story hit you as hard as it hit me? Smash that like button if you felt the heat, or leave a comment if you've got a story of your own that burns like this one. Don't like it? That's cool. Tell me why. Subscribe for more raw, real tales that'll keep you up at night, and share this with someone who loves a good scandal. Until next time, keep watching, keep feeling, and maybe keep a few secrets of your own.